The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Welcome, good morning. This is Autism Live, and we're thrilled to have you guys here on this Wednesday morning. We have been having some technical issues here. So if for some reason, I know some of you were having an issue yesterday being able to hear. I've got my earpiece, we're getting feedback. So write into us right now and let us know if you're hearing the show, because we're concerned about whether the feed is getting out with sound. I wish I knew sign language, because I would be signing as we go along. I'll put that on my list of things to do. Thrilled to be here with you on this Wednesday morning. I'm Shannon Penrod. We are coming to you live from the Warner Center, because we would only do a show this way live, right? The Warner Center is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And gosh, can I just take a second to say how proud I am to be here and to be in CARD's headquarters. I just have warm fuzzies this morning for CARD. I always talk to you guys on this show about the fact that my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and I'm the luckiest of lucky people, because I was fortunate enough to get the right information at the right time, and I found out about CARD, came to CARD. My son we had to fight with our funding source, but we fought and were successful to get the right amount of therapy at the right time from the right people, and my life is so rich because of that. So if I wax poetic about CARD from time to time, it's because it's personal, and that's the beginning and middle and end of that story. It's personal with me, and every day I'm so grateful for what I have found at CARD, and what my son found at CARD, and ever so much more than that. Now to be a part of so many growing families, it's just I feel very grateful this morning. Is that safe to say? I'm going to say it anyway. In any case, we are going to be here with you this morning. We've got a great show for you. We're going to be live for the next hour. On Wednesdays, whenever we can, we have Dr. Doreen Grampiche, and she answers your questions during Ask Dr. Doreen. But you can see that it's not a Doreen morning, but it is an Evelyn Kung morning, and that is a fabulous thing. Evelyn Kung, who's the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, is here. She's going to be answering your questions in real time, and she's such an amazing expert, and we really appreciate her being here to share her expertise. I want to say, though, that you can be writing in any way that you like. Traven is going to show you some of the different methods that you can choose to watch the show and to write in. While he shows you that, I want to mention that our homepage is autism-live.com. And I really, back in the day, I used to say to people, go to YouTube, go to Facebook, go to wherever you want, and I still hold to that. But we've really done some work on the website, and I really think that it's a resource that's worth visiting. I didn't used to feel all warm and fuzzy about the website, but I do now. And I think all the things that you would find on Facebook and YouTube, you can find there on our website. So I encourage you to go there. I encourage you, one of the many things, it's present in my mind today up at the top, there's something that says toy guide. If you're looking for a present for anyone in the autism community, it's a great guide. We are just getting started working on the 2019 toy guide. So if any of you have a toy that isn't in the toy guide from last year that you're like, man, Shannon, this is it, I want you to be writing in, because we're looking for those spectacular toys for 2019. Keep in mind that there's a thing at the bottom of the the page that you can, it says chat. If you click on that, you can be writing in right on that page. It's completely anonymous. It's totally free, but you can also be commenting on YouTube and Facebook. We're monitoring those comments most especially. So, having said all of that, I want to welcome our fabulous friend, Evelyn Kung. As I mentioned, she's the clinical director. That's the right term?
Yeah,
yes.
That's the title.
At the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. She's been working in this field for years.
Half my life.
Which is amazing, and is such a wealth of knowledge. I'm so lucky because every once in a while I get to go and do some fun things with Evelyn Kung. And yesterday we were showing some scenes with Dr. Temple Grandin.
yeah.
What we have not
So
showed on this show was we went with your fabulous daughter, one of your fabulous daughters, because you have two fabulous daughters, let's be clear about that. The three of us went to Houston. Houston, we have a problem, Houston.
Yeah.
Literally to NASA with Dr. Temple Grandin. We got to tour.
It was amazing.
Wasn't
It's the trip of a lifetime.
Right. I mean, honestly, I think, it's one of those things that I still go, oh yeah, we did that. I thought that was a dream I had. And we took footage, and at some point we're going to show it to you. I don't know when I have time to go through all of it. But it was us and 5, 6 astronauts and Temple Grandin.
And they kept telling us, you guys, you don't understand what you're getting. This is like the rock star tour.
I mean, insane. There's one in NASA. They have a life-size model of the International Space Station, and if you get the good tour, you get to walk around the outside of it. But we got the presidential tour, where we got to go inside of it, and I was doing a lot of the camera work. And so at one point they said, oh, what would be great is if you get a shot of Temple Grandin coming towards you down the shaft. And so they said, Shannon, go and get into the space station and be there with the camera waiting. And then she got interested in something outside and you guys got distracted. So I was up in the National Space Station model for 10, 15 minutes by myself with a camera going, I don't believe this is happening. But it was super, super cool. So that's just one of the many adventures I've gone on. We do fun things together, you and I.
Really fun things.
So in any case, we have those side stories too. But she's here. She's going to be answering your questions in real time. We always give the disclaimer that there is no professional, no matter how much experience, that could give individual specific advice in this particular format. It would do a disservice to the person on the autism spectrum to think that somebody could just read a paragraph and know about them. You know what our friend Dr. Stephen Shore says, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And to really be a professional, you need to sit with a person and see behavior, not just hear about it in 2 sentences from a third party. So in this format, what we'll be doing is you'll ask a question and Evelyn will give information which hopefully will help you to go back to your experts and ask more questions so that you arrive at decisions that you need to make with your professionals that are with you. So that's our disclaimer, but thrilled to have you here. So I'm going to jump in, if that's okay.
Okay, let's start.
First question. I have a 2.5-year-old with no diagnosis. I evaluated him several times for early intervention and he was not approved. He cries very easily and spends most of his day doing this, although he does know how to talk full sentences. He also does not want to play outside if other kids are there and will cry to go in if he is outside with them. Once he is crying, he cannot soothe himself. Is this something that requires further evaluation for autism, or is this normal childhood development?
I think you're in a tricky place. Okay, I wouldn't go specifically for an evaluation with autism. I would go in saying there's an evaluation for the delays that you have.
There we go.
Because a normal 2-year-old is out there trying to figure out what other kids are doing, wanting to be with them. The self-soothing issue is something that all kids have to learn from. That's how they end up sleeping through the night, is they have to learn how to self-soothe when they wake up. Being upset, it takes a variety of time. It's an executive function skill, But what I would do is I'd probably go find a child development specialist of some sort who actually does work in the field with autism, but not maybe particular autism, but maybe just generally in delays. Because one of the things that happens to many patients who walk in this office is a lot of times we end up seeing kids like this who have been to maybe 2-3 other people, and they have a diagnosis. Usually the age is below the age of 6 and below, where there's just something not right and nobody can figure it out, and then they end up with kind of a host of all these little diagnoses all over the place. But I always say, don't look at the diagnoses, look at actually the symptoms.
Yeah.
And really, there are deficits there, and you want to address the deficits. So in whatever way that you get, early intervention is the best, because their brains are learning. He's definitely capable of learning because he does play, you said. He just doesn't want to play when the other kids are out there, and he talks in full sentences. But it's just really that there are some delays there, and you want to check them out. And if you can give some intervention to those delays, you want it.
Yeah, I love looking at it as a delay, because that means that it's something that, you know, we can look at and catch up on and improve on. And I think that that's important, because a lot of people will say to themselves, and your family members will say, well, just wait. Just wait and see if it shakes out. But, you know, sometimes the waiting puts your child in a place of being frustrated longer, being held back from things that might be enjoyable to them, like playing with other kids. I don't know why, and I wish we could just eliminate that sentence from early childhood discussion.
Yeah.
Let's just wait and see.
Yeah.
What's that about? Don't like that. So get yourself some assistance and see what it is that needs to be worked on, and then work on it. And it doesn't, we all want to label things and put them in pretty boxes, and but if we just look at it, how can we help this child? A whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation, and it's a little bit easier, I think, so many times because autism's in the media now. There are so many people that just worry about it ahead of time, and they think about it. And maybe that's not where your child is for the full-fledged diagnosis, but maybe there are some delays that are consistent. You don't want those delays to keep being delayed. Yeah. You know, you want to catch up on them. And, you know, if he's crying because the other kids are coming, it could actually even be a sensory thing, you know? Yeah. It could be a whole host of other things that are happening during that time period, but he's not able to tell you.
Right. Well, and is it me that I'm the cynical person? It could be that one of those kids hurt him.
Yeah, it could be.
You know, it could be that one kid was mean or shoved him or whatever. Like, who knows? But you don't want to leave that to fester.
And there are some kids who's just their personalities. I was talking to another parent about it, a typical parent yesterday, and she was just like, well, when I was a kid, I liked things in order. Yeah. And I hated it when, like, kids would just spontaneously be like, let's play blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, no, you said we were going to play.
Right.
And so there's personality in there, too.
Right, but this is not a person this is a neurotypical person.
Yeah, this is a neurotypical person.
You know, has not had issues with that going into their life, but, you know.
But she just said it was annoying, and she would just, like, shut down because she could not understand why other kids would, you know, want to do things like that and change their plans. Yeah. And a lot of our kids on the spectrum, actually, that's the hardest part, is dealing with neurotypical kids, is the spontaneity. They don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. You know, but that's not something to think about. Look at what he's doing, look at and see what delays are there, and then start addressing them.
Okay. We have a couple of questions that have come in on YouTube. I love, somebody sent us a couple of emojis, and one of them is a teddy bear. One is a spaceship and a teddy bear. I don't know what that means, but I like it. It makes me feel good, so all good. Lori says, could you please give me some advice on a 3-year-old nonverbal toddler with autism starting school and has to ride the bus, has meltdowns? What do I do? How can I help with the transition? It says that they will be in a special class of 4 to 8 students. They're suggesting to take him to the school beforehand, but want him to ride the bus at least 2 out of the 5 days that he has to go. Now, you talk about how people have things. I had a real problem in 4th grade because it was the first time that I had to take a bus. Before that, that's not true. I had to take a bus for a brief period of time when I was in kindergarten, and I'm just realizing this, putting this together, we were in an accident with the bus. And then I didn't have to ride the bus anymore. My mother drove me, right, for years and years and years. I hadn't really ever put that together until just now. But then in 4th grade, I had to ride the bus to school, and the bus would pick us up. We were the first stop, and then she would ride over hills and whatever, and she would go like 65 miles an hour over these hills. And I'm somebody who gets car sick sitting in an office chair, right? And I hated it. I had perfect attendance, and in 4th grade, I started being sick so that I wouldn't have to ride the bus. I was 4th grade, not on the spectrum, totally verbal, but did not want to tell my mother, I get sick on the bus. So I would get sick earlier in the day and go, I just can't go to school today because I didn't want to ride the bus. So the bus thing, you know, I have a personal affinity with that. And boy, when I started going to a school that I could walk to, no problem.
Life changed.
No problem. Life changed. Absolutely. So what would you say? But so this is a 3-year-old who doesn't have the words to say what he doesn't like about the bus.
And okay, so one of the things that we all look at is usually we look at kids going to kindergarten. And one of the things that people look at kindergarten is kindergarten readiness. Then they have preschool and they have preschool readiness. And for some reason, if let's say you're looking at a preschooler for preschool readiness, if they don't have all the skills, they say, why don't you wait a year, wait 6 months. You have a 3-year-old with a diagnosis and they want them in school.
Right.
It becomes an issue for me because I'm thinking, does this kid even have any school readiness skills?
Right.
You know, does he have communication? Does he have the ability, like, to regulate himself? There's a ton of issues. I mean, and I come from the ABA world, so I come more from the ABA world. If you're nonverbal and you're 3, you should be doing 40 hours of ABA because that's what research shows is appropriate. Yeah. And I know for me, when I started having kids and having schools, you want the schools to address everything. And the idea of fighting a school is very daunting. You had to do it for so many years.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that it's one of these
This gray hair, all from fighting the school. All from fighting the school, yeah.
And the thing is, it's just like, what does research show? Research shows that for a 3-year-old, it's intensive early intervention.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what I say is, I'm not cutting off school forever. I'm saying, hey, let's get some of those school readiness skills.
Yeah.
So that he can be in school and actually learn something.
But you're not saying don't do nothing.
Yes, I'm not saying don't do nothing.
What is advisable in the studies that you're talking about is instead at 3, to, as you were saying, to do that 40-hour-a-week ABA program. And there are a couple of schools that offer that one-to-one. There are a couple of them. I would hazard that you are probably not the lottery winner to be close to one of them because almost nobody is, and the waiting lists are long. So the assumption here is that even if it's a great program, there is no study that shows that the great program at school is as effective as the 40-hour program in the center for autism.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have a 3-year-old, and does he even have the basic skills of imitating other kids?
Yeah.
You know, you have the 1-year-old who's constantly looking and trying to imitate, and then you have the 2-year-old who's imitating and pretending to play, and those are all prerequisite skills for school. And functional communication, being able to say what he wants, being able to tell you, I don't feel good, at least, you know, or to say, no, I don't want to go on the bus.
Right.
Whatever it may be. But I really, there can be a lot of good school programs out there, but you want to look at what's best for your child.
Right.
And, you know, right now the studies show it is early intensive intervention, 1-to-1 ABA. And then get him some of those skills, get him imitating other kids because he can't talk. I always emphasize with all the ABA providers, all of our BCBAs, you really want to do imitation until you don't have to do imitation anymore. When a parent first walks in and says, hey, we went to this school, or we went to school or family function, and he just started doing what all the other kids were doing. I'm like, yes. Yeah. You know, because you don't need to speak for that.
Yeah. So last night, we went to see a play that was playing at the Amundsen. It was hilarious. But one of the things when we were sitting there and looking, you know, we were looking at who is a very physical show. And I imagine that, you know, they have a long list of understudies, and I think the understudies go in from time to time because it's a very physical show. And was sort of looking at that, and I want to compare this to that when you have a show and somebody's an understudy, imagine being the understudy and never having a rehearsal for the show and just being thrown in. Now, some people can do that. Some people are good enough that they can do that, but most people most people can't do that. They have to have a lot of rehearsal that they do on the side from the show. And then they have one rehearsal where they get to go in and be in the show before they have to be in the show. That's usually how it goes. So when you send your child to preschool without preschool skills, you're putting them in the show. They've had no rehearsal, they've had no prep, and the kids are there and they're asking stuff and opportunities are coming and they don't know the lines. And so it's frustrating to them and they go, oh, I don't like school. School's not fun, and then you have to battle that forever. Whereas if they get that intensive ABA and they do a lot of things and they learn a lot of skills, then they go into the show, the preschool program or whatever, and the kid comes up and their chances of being successful and understanding, they're doing this and I'm supposed to do this, go up astronomically, and then they have a better time. But school's not going to say that to you.
Yeah, school will not say that to you, and I always say I want the child's first interaction with school to be positive.
Yep.
I really want it to be positive. And if they don't have those readiness skills, the chances of being positive along with a diagnosis is very nil. And so do what your child needs, get some of those skills built in, and then we'll start talking about school, you know, and integrating in school and integrating school successfully. I know but the bus is probably an IEP goal. That's why you're saying 2 out of 5 days. Does a 3-year-old really need to be riding a bus? You know, that's a big question. Would a typical 3-year-old be okay riding a bus? There's a lot of typical neurotypical kids under 5 who will not be okay, and there's plenty school age.
I was over 5.
No, I mean, I have so many
okay.
friends who lived in the Midwest and had to ride buses to school, and they all have these negative experiences.
Yeah. It's
when
not
they're
the best
younger.
thing. So I know you wrote in asking about the bus, but I think the issue is something else that, you know, and the fact that school is pushing for that's the goal when your child isn't speaking, you know. And I'm an ex-school teacher. I think school is a fabulous thing. None of us are saying that school is not a good thing, but there's a time and a place. And as you said, the irony of that a lot of times they'll look at neurotypical kids and say, we need to wait a year for them. But your child doesn't need to be just at home doing nothing, but can you get an ABA program started? Now, if you can't, write us back and we can, on another show, talk about desensitization for the bus. But that really isn't the thing that would be ideal to be working on with him.
Yeah, right now.
It isn't the thing. Okay, I'm gonna preview the next question that we're asking, then we're gonna go to break and we'll come back and answer. So on Facebook, Michelle has written in, hi Michelle, and says, why does my daughter watch Elmo and Baby Einstein at 16 years old and becomes angry and aggressive when watching this? So that's gonna be our next question. It's gonna come up after this break. Stick with us.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Hi, I decided to start Autism Works Now as a small business because 90% of individuals with autism and related disabilities are not employed after graduating from high school. Our mission at Autism Works Now is to create job opportunities for spectrum youth and kids through awareness and education.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Evelyn Kung, and she is answering your questions in real time. In fact, somebody had written it on Facebook, Michelle. Hi, Michelle. And Michelle says, why does my daughter watch Elmo and Baby Einstein at 16 years old and becomes angry and aggressive when watching this? And we were talking during the break, and I said, I have theories, but I want to know what Evelyn thinks.
I want to know her theory.
So let's start with you, though. You're the expert. Why do you think that is?
Okay, I'm going to assume that she's on the spectrum, okay?
Right, well, that's the assumption we're making.
The assumption. Yes. I think so many of those videos early on, like they watched, so many of our kids go back to them because they're comforting to some degree.
Yeah.
And and also our kids like routines. So they saw that video hundreds of times and they want it again. And I have so many like 14-year-olds where the parents are like, I'm so tired of Disney, I'm so tired of all these songs. And I would say, well, what other songs or movies have they seen 1,000 times? Because if you show them something enough, it becomes a routine.
Right.
And then they realize, oh, that's what it is. And that's the reason they go back to them.
Yeah.
And I think so many of our teenagers that have gone back to watch like Sesame Street or specific episodes, they like it for the routine, but I don't think they actually like it.
Yeah.
You know, at a certain point, they get very frustrated by it because maybe they wanted another version or they want something else about it or there's something different about it, and that's what gets them upset. You know, that's one theory is that. Another theory is there are some of our kids who, there's a parent the other day who asked me, who actually came into one of our clinics and said, well, my child perseverates and engages in stereotherapy. You guys cannot stop him. Mm. And so then I started telling them, I said, well, you know, functional behavior and stereotherapy move up and down, they correlate. Right. So the more functional a kid is, the lower the stereotherapy, the higher the stereotherapy, the lower the functioning skills in their daily life. Right. And then he's like, no, you can't stop it because it's like an itch you have to scratch. Mm. And then I said, yeah, but if you scratch too much, you start to bleed. Right. And I think that's so many of our kids, they might like the stereotherapy initially, but at a certain point, it almost like stimulates them too much. Right. And they're just like, they end up in a behavior and they get either super anxious or like they're just really agitated. Yeah. And that could also be this too. Yeah. So I don't know. Those are my theories, my two.
My theory is very closely related to your first one because I know from watching all my friends who have neurotypical kids and then watching my son, and I've got family members, they're in, you know how they're, and it's what the movie Inside Out is all about, that there is this transition time in everyone's life when we were doing things because those were the kid things to do and they comforted us and they were the things to do, and then suddenly we're doing those things and they don't give us what we need anymore. Yes. We want to go back to them, and I've watched, and it's very interesting to watch family members, you know, around 11, and friends of mine, kids around 11, 12, go through this really weird thing that is the Inside Out movie where they don't fit in their environment anymore, and it doesn't feel good. And they're like between two worlds. They are not teenagers, but they are not little kids anymore, and they want to ride the kiddie ride, but they feel bad about riding the kiddie ride, and and when they do ride the kiddie ride, it doesn't fulfill the need for them. And I think for our kids, sometimes that comes later. I have a friend who has a young person on the spectrum who experienced a loss, that a family member very close died. And we saw that there was a regression right afterwards, that individual on the spectrum wanted all the things that he had wanted when he was younger. And it was really troublesome for Mom. She was like, oh no, he's gonna regress and want those. But what happened is when he went to those things and was allowed to have them, they weren't satisfying, and he became very angry because what he wanted was the feeling of when everything was okay. And his understanding of the world was, if I watch this video, then I will be transported back to that time in my life when everything was okay and I felt safe. But we know it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
And how often do we do this as adults that are not on the spectrum? I always talk about how the holidays, everybody is always chasing the perfect holiday, where you remember that holiday when we ate this? And it's never about what we ate, it's about how we felt. So you go and you overeat for the holidays, hoping that you're gonna feel the thing that you felt when you were 9, and you don't get it. All you feel is sugared up and too full, and like, what have I done? I know that this is not good for me, but we're all chasing what that felt like.
Yeah, and we all go back to movies and books and things to watch them because they made us feel good at some point. Yeah. And then you watch them, and at the end of it, you're like, oh, that's nice, but
I don't have that. I don't have that feeling.
It's not the same.
I wonder if this is this young person's way of saying, I don't feel comfortable, and finding something new that makes her feel that level of comfort. I love that now. I was in Target the other day, and they were selling weighted blankets in Target.
I love it. Yeah, it's so good.
Like, how mainstream has that gotten in just a couple of years? And I already brought up the toy guide this episode, but we find that a lot of our teenagers and young adults like that pressure, not all of them, but that now becomes their Snuggie thing. I can think of one young woman that she carries a coffee cup with a spoon, and that has become her comfort thing, and she feels like she's being an adult because she's there with her coffee cup with her spoon, and that's her comfort thing.
So just an interesting point. We have a teenager, and that we try to integrate them in school. Yeah. And he likes pressure, so we taught him how to use the weight room. And it provides a different kind of like intensity, and that's what he loves to do now.
Isn't that interesting? See, what I love about this, what I love about ABA, and I love about being around people like Evelyn is that it's not about taking it away from them at all. It's about finding the thing that fulfills the same purpose, but that fits their life where they are.
Yes, exactly.
And so what a wonderful thing. He's getting that feeling of the pressure from lifting the weights instead of wearing them, and how fabulous is that for his health and well-being?
And the thing is, socially, it's amazing because you can go work out with anybody.
Yeah.
It's a whole new social group that brings them into, and it was a surprise for people.
So, what advice would we give Mom about the Baby Einstein videos? And
my preference, and I know, is I always want to be age appropriate, because I think introducing a new skill that maybe she likes, probing, if she likes the videos, that is a thing, probing through different videos to see what she's interested in, but knowing that there's autism there, which means that she's going to need a lot of interaction and repetition before you know whether she truly likes it or not. You know, there needs to be a lot of exposure, routine exposure. So I have families who love Star Wars, and Star Wars is such a big deal for so many people that I just told them, just start playing Star Wars in the background in your house.
Yes.
Just have it on.
Yeah.
And the kid walks in and out, and after a while, the kid starts realizing it's, you know, it went from Barney to Star Wars.
Right. Right.
And it's just the familiarity, knowing who the characters are, you know, not understanding the whole story. But for whatever reason, it became a family thing. And there's, I don't know how many movies out now. So it was okay, you know. So
There's a whole land at Disneyland now.
exactly. So it's just like trying to find something else for her, something that's going to comfort her, but something, you know, that is more her age, so that hopefully she can do it with other family members or peers or, you know, whatever level she's at.
And she's written back to us, and she says, yes, that she wonders if this is it, and that it's very hard to stop her from watching it. And that Elmo's voice, I think what you're trying to say there, Michelle, is that it's an auditory stim for her, that it, you know, becomes a thing for her. But you know, I find it fascinating what things get related to what things, and you know, even, I don't know, you're probably going to disagree with me because it's not necessarily an age-appropriate thing at 16, but Elmo's a puppet. And sometimes our kids understanding that Elmo is a puppet and having the opportunity to work with a puppet, to do something with a puppet. I love puppets. I'm a puppeteer, and I still have puppets, and I am over 50. So I think it's appropriate for a 16-year-old, but I know everybody doesn't. And by the way, we found out a couple of weeks ago that Bonnie Yates also has puppets. So what does that say? You know, I would argue that Bonnie and I turned out okay, but I think there might be people who disagree. But in any case, it might be interesting to see what she would do with a puppet, and given the opportunity for her to play with a puppet, and you can get a marionette or you can get a puppet. They have some great puppets that are out there.
And it's interesting that you said her voice, because if you think it's an auditory thing, I always think in terms of auditory replacement. So actually what I do is, usually what I tell the families is, what music do you guys listen to as a family? Because I try to create something that integrates the child into the family.
Yeah.
Bring all that music back out and put it on repetition. Just
There we
play it
go.
over and over, and the child will start to have an affinity for the different songs and different music, and just the repetition. And I have actually most of my teenagers, whenever we start doing that, they all like the music where you can hear the words.
Yeah.
You know, and there's just something about it.
Yeah.
And there is something, like I've had other kids who like Elmo, and there's a pitch that they like.
Yeah.
And so it might turn into some other kind of music too.
Yeah.
And you just never know. But trying all these things and just bringing it in a different way, and knowing that nothing is going to be an immediate fix.
Yeah.
It's going to be the repetition and the exposure, that where if you do it enough, the child actually will acclimate, whether it is to going to a puppet and learning how to use one and play with one, or if it's to music, or if it's another type of movie, whatever it may be.
It'll be fun figuring it out. But I do think, you know, keeping our kids busy and away from, like, I know it's hard to have her, but she must sleep at some point. And we never want to be deliberately cruel, but if that DVD were to get displaced someplace, not impossible, but someplace where you could get at it if you needed to, but it is not readily available where it was, and that morning is very busy, that you have places to go that are very reinforcing, that, you know, she's got way too many things to do, and they're all things that she likes, but that aren't a place where you can be and watch Elmo, and just keep her as busy as possible so that you can wean her off of it. But
as you're weaning her off, you're weaning her on something.
yes.
It's important to be doing both at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot out there now. I mean, things have changed so much, you know. I'm the video generation, but what I realized for all the kids when we've done this is a lot of times the videos can go away because you can find them on YouTube.
Yes,
you can
that's
find them
true.
on the internet. So then the access is not as easy.
Yes, that's
And
true.
if you really, really needed it, or if you wanted, for some comfort, she does want it and you want to give it to her, it's easy to find it online now.
But the thing that's, you know, I mean, I think it's harder to take something away when it actually is providing the comfort, and I think we've established that it's not. So that makes it a little bit easier to say, hey, now's the time to transition out of this. Although, don't kid me for a second here, Michelle, it's going to be a rough, bumpy thing.
And that's why I'm saying start doing the exposure to all these other things and figuring out what she really wants along the way.
Yeah, whether it's making jewelry or,
whatever it may
could be anything.
But as long as there's something to transition to.
Yeah.
There's so many families that come in and say, I want this behavior to go away, but I'm like, is there anything else that you do?
Yeah.
Because there has to be something else or a replacement of some sort.
Right. That behavior was serving some sort of a purpose. We got to make sure that we fulfill that purpose. Okay, we're going to take another break, and then we're going to be back with more questions with Evelyn Kung. Stick with us. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs, like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with Evelyn Kung. She's answering your questions in real time. So the next question that we have is, I have a 5.5-year-old boy with autism. He is very brilliant and verbal, but extremely hyper. Have tried so many things. What should I do? And we've had this question a couple of times in a couple of different formats.
Yeah. Why don't you give your...
Well, my standard thing when people start talking about hyperactivity and lack of focus, because the first thing that I always think about as a mom is, because you guys have taught me this, is make sure, because there's behavioral things and then there are medical things, right?
Yeah.
And behavioral things are great and are very effective, but if you are doing a behavioral intervention on something that's medical, you've already set yourself up for a steeper climb.
Yes.
Not that it's impossible, but that it's much harder. So studies have shown that the amount of pesticides in your child's system will directly relate to how hyperactive they are. So, and that removing pesticides from your child's diet helps your child to be less hyper and less, having no focus. But not only pesticides, also artificial colors and flavors. Do you realize that in the United States we have artificial colors and flavors that are in our children's snacks and foods that have been outlawed in every other major country?
Yeah.
That Europe does not allow for people to put the crap that gets put into our kids' food. They don't allow it. And they don't allow the colors. It's why when you go to Europe, the M&Ms look different.
Yeah.
Because they don't allow for that stuff to be in their kids' foods. So I know it's a rabbit hole, and when you start, I remember going to a conference and hearing women talk about this kind of thing and thinking, I don't want to grow up to be one of them, because I got enough things I got to worry about. I don't want to have to worry about that, and that's a whole other, I got to get to speech, and I got to get to OT and to therapy, and I don't want to have to worry about. But I finally looked at the studies and went, oh. this makes sense to me. And so I started us on a more organic, not crazy organic, but looking at the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And the Dirty Dozen, we make a real effort in our family not to eat unless it is organic. These are 12 things every year that the Environmental Working Group looks at and says, if you're buying this commercially, it's got pesticide on it. And it's likely going to get into your child's bloodstream. So we, even in a restaurant, try not to order those 12 things unless we know that it's organic. And the summer that we did that, and I started with my son and I together, doing that, and I personally saw and felt a difference in myself and in my child. And I could feel what it was like. You know, the bottoms of your feet are the most, it's where your skin is where you detox, right? And my son and I both have skin issues. So our body doesn't detox as well as it should. But it was very hot out. And I was about a month in on my detox from pesticides and was wearing a pair of shoes. And I'm not kidding you. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but I was walking and it was hot out, but the shoes fell apart on my feet.
So crazy.
Because so much was coming out of the bottom of my feet. It melted the bottom of the shoes. And they just fell apart. I was walking and then I had no shoes on. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, okay. There's a fair amount of stuff that is exiting my body right now, and I felt a difference in my focus, and I saw a difference in my child. So, and his ability to focus, I saw a difference in it. So, and then the other thing is, if your child is yeast reactive, you can get a hyperactive thing as well. That's a whole other. I've written blogs about that. So that's my take on it. Make sure that your child's system is working properly in terms of the hyperactive. But there's a whole behavioral element to it too.
Yeah, there's a whole behavioral element. There's so many of our kids where we're gonna not do the biomedical, or we've already done it, and there's still a lot of hyperactivity. Sometimes it's physiological, not like biomedical, where one of our kids just started sleeping better because we realized he wasn't tired enough.
He needed a little bit more. He needed more push-pull, big muscle,
like run and swim. And they were like, every summer he suits really well because he swims all day.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect that is just in every typical child out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just sometimes you just have to get it. And especially if you have a child who's on the spectrum who's a little bit more brilliant, they tend to do more sedentary activities.
Yes.
It's the Legos and the books and the facts and the videos, and it's a lot of indoor sitting sedentary.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times just adding this other physiological component actually changes their lives quite a bit. It's a little bit more difficult because if you really want your child to be attending in school, you have to do it all before school.
Yes.
And when I start talking to OTs about sensory diets and different things that the kids need, I always say, hey, the best kind is the kind where you get it all out in the morning and then you go, because we all have friends who, you know, go running no matter what.
Yep.
You know, it could be snowing outside and they're out running and they say that's how they can focus, you know, or, you know, go to the gym, or they just get up and they have to do these things before they know how to focus. So there's that aspect. But then there's the behavioral aspect.
Yeah.
And there's the behavioral aspect of if he's a smart kid, and so many of our kids on the spectrum are, they do realize that if they start to calm down, they are given more boring things to do.
Clever, Mr. Bond.
It's not their favorite things to do in front of them. Suddenly, it's not just my Legos. It's you're trying to get me to eat a certain way, to use my utensils, or you're trying to get me to sit and practice letters, you know, or things that are just not interesting. And kids on the spectrum have very specific interests.
Yeah.
And they're very black and white, so they tend to like it or they don't like it. That gray area it's something that we're always trying to teach our kids on the spectrum, because that's where flexibility develops. And in life, we don't only have the loves of life to engage in. We have to do things that we're not so interested in and be able to do them well. Because then the ultimate access or the ultimate reinforcer is what we get at the very end.
Yes.
And you put up with the things that you know will get you there. And if your child doesn't have that long-term view, he may just be smart and just be trying to get out of things.
Yes.
You know, escape is really effective. Avoidant behavior is really effective. And especially if you realize that I can just jump up and like dance on my toes and run away and they won't follow me, or they're too tired of following me, or they know, oh, I only have to do this for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Because if I do it for 30 minutes, they're just going to leave me alone.
I always say if I felt like I could do any of those behaviors and get out of doing my taxes, I would. I just would, because I don't want to do that, right?
Yep.
And if that would really fix it for me, and my understanding of it was that it fixed me, and I understand that it doesn't get me out of it, but I still do avoidance things to get out of it.
Oh, I completely do avoidant things of things I don't like. And so all of us do. It's just that in the end, some goal or something is looming over us where we can't have access to something, then that's why we end up doing it. You know, but through all of school, you don't like every subject. There's very few kids who like all subjects in school. You kind of tolerate the good for the ones that you just tolerate. And that could be it. Especially if you have a brilliant kid, that a lot of times they only want to focus on what they want to do, and they're not understanding the long term. And being able to, and self-regulation for a lot of kids on the spectrum, that executive function skill of being able to calm yourself is also very hard.
Yeah.
So learning a skill on learning how to cope, learning how to tolerate physically is actually a skill to learn.
Yeah.
You know, it's if a lot of our kids on the spectrum have really good rote memory where they can pay attention to things specifically, but their working memory is not as good. And a lot of our kids, when you start talking about working memory, which is kind of like an online memory where you know, I'm talking to Shannon and I was like, oh yeah, I remember NASA. And I'm pulling something completely out of, you know, what looks like left field, but no, it's NASA because we went together.
Right.
And being able to pull that memory is something that kids with autism have a hard time doing. And it's that flexibility in thinking. And a lot of times they might see something has no relevance to me and I'm out.
Right.
You know, and I'm on to the next thing. And they don't see that, oh, if I waited a little bit longer, this is the part that I like. Or if I did this a little bit different, they just see it as different, and then they're on to the next thing.
So this becomes a whole set of lessons then that we need to teach them. We need to teach them waiting.
Yes, waiting. You need to teach them how to ask questions, because questions are how neurotypical kids understand things they don't like.
Yes.
How long is this going to go?
Right.
When do I get out of here? What are you going to give me if I did this?
Right.
You know, like it's just you have 1,000 questions from neurotypical kids who help monitor and make them stay in one place. And if you don't have, if your child doesn't have that ability to ask those questions, the easiest thing is just to leave.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of behavioral components, it's waiting, it's coping skills, it's sustaining attention to things that aren't of highly interest, it's learning how to divide your attention, going from one thing to another. Some kids will see something and then they're off to the next, you know? And it's learning how to stay in one place and maybe see that and see this and come back to it. You know, it's all different types of memory and attention and focus and, you know, and then there's a behavioral component of, hey, if I just avoid this or escape, it's a lot easier sitting here.
And thank you for all of that. I hope that helps. The person that we were talking to in the beginning about the bus has written back in and said that it's their grandson and that they have been on a waiting list for ABA for over 6 months, and he's only been receiving speech therapy. And I don't know if you just heard Ev's sigh, because that says it all. And you know, I've been talking to a mom that has been on a waiting list for 2 years for ABA. And here's the thing, and then I want to let you talk and address this too. It's so overwhelming when you start to think about like all the things that you have to do. But way before there was insurance that covered ABA, there were people who figured this out, and they figured it out how to make sure that their child had ABA no matter what. And they transcended money issues, and they transcended all kinds of issues because they just made up their mind and said, we're doing that. And if we go here and they can't do it, then we're going to go here. And if they can't do it, then we'll do it ourselves. And that's really honestly the truth. We talk about skills on this show. It's skillsforautism.com that you can go there. It's a very inexpensive curriculum that is the same curriculum that CARD uses. And you can get a monthly subscription to that to be able to know what to teach your child. It has the assessment, it has a bunch of tools. If you want to know how to do it, you can go to ibehavioraltraining.com, and very inexpensively, and I'm going to say this for less than $500, you can take all the classes that a beginning therapist would take, and for that less than $500, you can train a whole team of people to do that. Is that going to be as good as if you have an ABA provider with experience? No, probably not, but it's better than waiting around 6 months. You don't have 6 months to wait around. And I go back to one of the families we show from time to time, a video clip of a little girl named Maddie, that when Skills was first available, and Maddie lives in a place where there's not a whole lot close by, and her parents were trying to figure it out on their own, but Skills became available. They used Skills. They trained a bunch of people at their church who volunteered, and they had people helping all the time. And Maddie does not carry the diagnosis of autism anymore, and they were not at a center. They made it happen.
And the first 10 years of my life of doing ABA, there wasn't ABA.
Yeah, it wasn't available like it is now.
It wasn't available, and people didn't even call it ABA. I used to always, the first 10 years, I used to ask people, what do we do?
Yeah.
I know I do behavior therapy, but I don't know what this is called. And it was just such a different mindset. But my first 10 years, all I used to do was travel across the country and around the world. And families they didn't have Skills, there was no internet. And they would hire a BCBA, or actually at the time no BCBA, but they hired a consultant to come out.
Yeah.
They would get people, sometimes it was volunteers, sometimes it was neighbors, friends, and they would train like 10 people. And then every 3 months, we'd have phone calls, and we'd go over every lesson. I'd leave a whole lesson, behavior plans, train them, do hands-on training, and after 2 or 3 days, leave them and come back 3 months later and to do the consult. And that model still exists in a lot of places, what families told me was they just had to get it in their mindset that they were going to start a business for 2 years, an intensive 2-year business on their child.
Yeah.
And find the people, coordinate, pay, volunteer, whatever it was, but they had to get their kids services.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked. And I have actually quite a few kids who live normal lives now in their mid-20s and are doing some incredible things, but they have their own lives. And the first 2, 3, 4 years were really in intensive ABA, but we integrated them into school, and they live their own life now, and that's just amazing. And the parents really did it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to cut to the chase because we got like 2.5 minutes left. Step 1 is making up your mind that you're doing it one way or the other, no matter what. Mm-hmm. The child's going to get ABA therapy, and at 3, we're encouraging you to get a minimum of 40 hours of one-to-one ABA. That's a lot, but it's what gets it done. The studies are there to show that. So make up your mind that that's what's going to happen. And then number 2, go and look and see if you can get a good ABA provider. You're on a list for somebody. Call them every day and go, is it my turn yet? Be nice. Be very nice. Be very nice, but call every day and go, is my grandson coming today? When are we coming? Mm-hmm. What do we have to do to be able to come? Today? Is it today? And be persistent, because when they see a family that's like, oh, they've made up their mind, then they want to work with that family. They'll work as hard as they can to get you in. And if that provider won't do it, see if there's anybody else. Get on more than one waiting list. And if you have to not tell them that you're on more than one waiting list, do that. Don't tell them. I mean, this is me as a parent. I know you would never. Ev would never tell you to do that, but no, I'm telling you, do whatever you have to do. And in the meantime, while you're on the waiting list, try the free trial of Skills starting today. Do 1 video on IBT today. See if that's something that you can do, and get moving. Yeah. I would do the getting compliance in your home video, ibehavioraltraining.com. Do that one, because when you get compliance, then you can do a whole bunch of other stuff.
Get compliance, that means they're listening to you.
Right. So, but get started today, and you can. That's the really good news. You can, and if you see. Honestly, if you see that Skills, it's really reasonably priced, but if it's too much for you, and it would have been for me at a certain point, so no shame, no harm, no foul, and if IBT is too expensive for you, then please apply for grants. And there are grants that will pay for it for you to be able to do it. I would rather see you spend that grant to get an iPad or get co-pays for ABA, but do what you need to do. Let's get this kiddo the help that he needs, because guess what? He deserves it. And his life will be changed because of it. And it really requires everybody getting up and going, okay, whatever we were doing yesterday wasn't enough. I didn't realize how much it was going to take, but we're on board. we're getting this kid ready for the Olympics, we're starting a business, and the business is him. And we're in this to win it, and we're gonna do everything that we can, and that's the only choice.
Yeah.
And then write me, and I'll help you along with more steps after that. But I want to hear in a couple of weeks that this kiddo has started ABA, one way or the other.
Yes.
Let's do that. All right, we're out of time.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing
Thank you.
how much it flies by? Thank you. I so appreciate you. I think we still have you next week, but I'm not 100% positive. 2 more. So what a wonderful thing that we have you, and I appreciate you so much. Want to say to you guys that we're back live tomorrow and live on Friday. So thrilled that you guys can be with us when you do. Please keep your questions coming in because we absolutely love the interaction. That's what's the most fun for us. We will be back tomorrow with fabulous guests and fabulous experts. You guys are going to really love it. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.